Evening, fellow fellas. Now, I was doing some research for my next video about the weirdest currencies of history, which will be coming out in around a week, so don't worry about that. And I came across this currency that I thought was so fucking funny, I just needed to make a separate video about it entirely. So today, we will be looking over the rhinestones of, I'm not joking, the Yap Islands. The Yap Islands are home to a very unique and ancient kind of money known as rhinestones. Rhinestones are basically these big donut-shaped stone discs that have their history going back around 600 years. Now, the folklore of the island state that most of these rhinestones actually came from the island of Palau, which is located roughly around 400 kilometers across the ocean. Now, while visiting the island of Palau, some of the Apese people had spotted crystalline limestone, which in nature is very shiny, and for that reason, the Apese people decided to take some of it back as souvenirs. This would later on turn to a longer history of the Apese people going back and forth from Palau to the Yap Islands and bringing more and more of these calcite rocks back. Now, the actual rocks themselves come in a whole bunch of different sizes, but they can be anywhere from around 3 centimeters wide all the way up to 4 meters tall. Reason behind making a hole in the middle was that it made it easier to transport bigger rocks from one place of the island to another place on the island, since they could just put a log through it and a whole bunch of people could then carry it on their backs. Now, these rhinestones were used for a whole bunch of different things like the purchasing of everyday goods, but they were also primarily used for more ceremonial things like weddings or inheritance from one person to another. Now, while the American dollar is the official currency of the Yap Islands, the Apese people still use these rhinestones in the ceremonial things like I mentioned, but they also just generally keep it for their heritage. Fun side plot, in the year 1871, one Irish-American born captain named David O'Keefe unfortunately got stranded on the islands of Yap, where he saw these big rhinestones. Now, after getting rescued by local people, David O'Keefe would then go to Hong Kong in the year 1872, but soon after returned back to the Yap Island where he would begin working as a merchant. Now, when David O'Keefe understood how these rhinestones worked as a currency, he said, Now, I don't speak Irish, but this roughly translates to, fuck yeah, capitalism. Now, David O'Keefe in the year 1872, equipped with a steamship and more advanced tools, teach some of the Apese people how to cut rhinestones even faster and even bigger than ever before. This way, David O'Keefe tried to monopolize on the big rhinestones that he could transport in abundant amounts from the island of Palau and very easily back to the Yap Islands. Now, since David O'Keefe practically had made a Ford Model T production line of these rhinestones, the average price of a rhinestone actually went down while David O'Keefe was on the island. A lot of these rhinestones that David O'Keefe produced throughout his lifetime, they weren't actually worth that much. Now, the reason behind this is that the Apese people actually value hard work, which means that if a rhinestone is bigger, more polished, or has more work put into it, or more deaths have been associated with the making of the rock, or the rock is just generally, more old, the rock would in that sense be worth more. Unfortunately, however, while going on a trip from the Yap Islands and to Hong Kong in the year 1901, David O'Keefe would tragically go missing at the sea, probably getting killed by a typhoon, never to be seen again. Now, I just want to state that even though David O'Keefe clearly made a whole bunch of money throughout most of his life off of these rhinestones, because, he definitely knew what the hell he was doing, he didn't actually die a baller exactly, since he didn't have that many assets to his name when he actually died, and he never even wrote a will on who was gonna get all of his money when he finally passed away. Now, there were definitely potential candidates of who could have gotten his money, since David O'Keefe did actually have family on the Yap Islands in the form of a wife who was of Japanese origin, and he also had 2 or even more children with her. Now, throughout this adventurous life of David O'Keefe, he also had a wife in the US of A who he was actually married to before ever going on the trip in the first place. So to sum it all up, one small trip changed David O'Keefe's life forever. For the better or for the good, no one really knows. So remember, folks, if you're ever laying in your bed late at night and questioning what the meaning of life is, I just want you to remember that even though society is built on money, friendships aren't, and the people around you are who truly matter. That being said, I'm gonna go to bed now because it's like 2 a.m. and I can't do this anymore.